ليلي، هل كان خيار بالنسبة لك أن تكون نشأتك في مجتمع يهودي منغلق إلى حد ما؟
I thought about joining the army because again it was seen as you're fighting for the Jewish people and you're helping protect us and make sure that something like the Holocaust would never happen again.
أصبحت تعملين في وزارة الداخلية.
I wanted to see what I could do from the inside, that we're not going to fix anti-Semitism or the tragedy of the Holocaust by creating another catastrophe for anyone else.
لم تخشي أن يصفونك بأنك خائنة للشعب اليهودي عندما اتخذت هذا القرار؟
Yeah, I mean, I knew that would happen.
قالت أن استقالتها من إدارة الرئيس جو بايدن احتجاجاً على الحرب الإسرائيلية على قطاع غزة كانت مدفوعة بقيمها اليهودية. هي أول موظفة سياسية أمريكية يهودية تعلن استقالتها من الإدارة الأمريكية احتجاجاً على دعم إدارتها اللامحدود للحرب الإسرائيلية على قطاع غزة. اختارت يوم ذكرى نكبة الفلسطينيين لتعلن استقالتها ودعمها لحقوق الشعب الفلسطيني ولمطالبه بالحرية. بعبارة لا يمكنني بعد الآن أن أمثل هذه الإدارة وسط الدعم الأمريكي الكارثي للإبادة الجماعية في قطاع غزة، قررت أن ترحل وأن ترفع صوتاً يهودياً عالياً رافضاً لسياسة دولة إسرائيل تجاه الفلسطينيين.
Two other Biden administration officials who resigned since the war in Gaza began are Lily Greenberg Call,
a special assistant to the chief of staff at the Department of the Interior.
The war in Gaza prompted outrage from Lily Greenberg, a Jewish American political appointee in the Biden administration.
I felt that, the president is really using the language of Jewish safety in particular to justify a genocide of Palestinians.
ليلي، أخبرينا قليلاً عن طفولتك كيهودية في المجتمع الأمريكي.
So I grew up in a very Jewish community in Southern California, went to Jewish day school, was very involved in my synagogue, grew up, pretty religious and very, very proud of my Jewish culture, of our heritage. But my community was, very, very diverse actually. A lot of Jewish people from Israel, from Iran, from Latin America, so from all over the world, and being really proud to be Jews. And it was also, in a lot of ways, because of that, we were, a community that was very pro-Israel, and being pro-Israel and being Jewish were seen as one and the same, because being pro-Israel meant supporting Jewish people, meant fighting against anti-Semitism, meant Israel was seen as the answer to anti-Semitism. It was how we were going to be safe in a world where something like the Holocaust had happened.
ليلي، هل كان خيار بالنسبة لك أن تكون نشأتك في مجتمع يهودي منغلق إلى حد ما وسط المجتمع الأمريكي؟
Well, it was very important for my parents to raise my sister and I in a very Jewish community. In a lot of ways, right, I was young. It wasn't really a choice that I had. It was just how I was raised. But I didn't feel like it was something that was put on me because I cared deeply about my Jewishness. And it is the first thing I identify as a Jewish person. It's my faith, but it's also my culture and my ethnicity and my heritage.
ليلي، خلال دراستك للسيما الجامعية شاركت برحلات إلى إسرائيل مع المنظمة الصهيونية. كيف كان التفاعل والانطباع لديك؟
I really enjoyed my time in Israel, Palestine. When I went on these sort of more organized trips, I spent some time in the West Bank. We went to Ramallah, we went to Bethlehem. I had opportunities to meet with Palestinian Muslims, Palestinian Christians. So of course, when I was in the West Bank, I saw I got to see the wall and experiencing, the crossing and, starting to see apartheid up close. And it was helpful in terms of starting to crack through some of the narrative that I had been taught. These trips started the process in a lot of ways of me being able to, to see, okay, is this state, is what's happening there, is it in line with the values that I have and the values that I've been taught by my community, by my Jewish community especially, of what is good and what we should be fighting for, and the kind of country, both in America and in Israel, Palestine, and anywhere that is, a good, safe place for people to live. So it started to undo some of that.
هل فكرتِ يوما بالانتقال للعيش في دولة إسرائيل؟
When I was younger, I thought about it. It's a very common thing for people in my community to do. We call it's called make aliyah, to return. And I thought about joining the army sometimes because that was also something that people in my community did. Because again, it was seen as you're fighting for the Jewish people and you're helping protect us and make sure that something like the Holocaust would never happen again. I have thought about it in the past, but not anymore.
اختارت ليلي العيش في الولايات المتحدة حيث ينبض عالم السياسة من داخل أروقة واشنطن. منذ صغرها أرادت أن تكون في قلب الحدث، وبدأت مبكراً في رسم مسارها مدفوعة بحلم الانضمام إلى صناع القرار، منخرطة في حملات دعم المرشحين لتصبح جزءاً من ديناميكية السلطة وتأثيراتها. ليلي، تحدثنا عن نشأتك يهودية وعن دراستك لاحقاً وزيارتك لإسرائيل. ما هي الظروف التي أوصلتك للعمل بإدارة الرئيس الحالي جو بايدن؟
So I started volunteering on Democratic campaigns when I was probably 10 years old because I felt that it was a way I've always been really interested in social justice, and politics, to me seemed like a vehicle for making the change that I wanted to. So I worked volunteered on campaigns throughout high school and college, and then I interned for Vice President Harris when she was my senator from California when I was in school. And then when I graduated, I graduated from university, and 2 months later I moved to Iowa to work for Kamala Harris's first presidential race when she was in the primary. After she left the race, I ended up working for what would eventually become Joe Biden's campaign, the Democratic Party in Arizona. And so I worked on the campaign, and that's eventually how I ended up in the administration a few years later, because I had been a staffer on the race.
لاحقاً أصبحت تعملين في وزارة الداخلية. ما كانت طبيعة عملك في الوزارة؟
So there's two types of jobs in the U.S. government. There's civil servants who, make up the majority of the government, and they are in, they have their jobs no matter who the administration is. And then there's a group of folks called politicals or appointees. That's what I was. I was hired directly by the White House, and my job was essentially contingent on, the Biden administration being in power. So my role was, I was working for the Chief of Staff of the Department of Interior within the Secretary's office. So I was working very closely with the Secretary, with the Chief of Staff, with senior leadership across the department.
ليلي، متى قررتِ أنك لا تريدين الاستمرار في هذا العمل احتجاجاً على سياسة الإدارة الأمريكية تجاه الحرب الإسرائيلية على قطاع غزة؟
I started to think about resigning in December of last year after Josh Paul, who was the first official to resigned, and then the first appointee to leave the administration was Tariq Kabash, who left in January. So I started to think about it, but I felt I wanted to see what I could do from the inside. I felt that I was in a unique position to speak up. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna see what I can do. And then as the months went on and things just got worse and worse and worse, and after the invasion of Rafah and the fact that that was supposedly a red line There was no accountability for that. But once I decided that I had to leave for myself and for my integrity and for my values, I wanted people that I worked for to know why I was leaving. And once I decided that, you know, I realized I actually had more power to maybe change something. I don't think Israel keeps Jewish people safe. I don't think a militarized state where you have to send your kids at 18 years old to the army is safety. And I don't think what Israel's doing right now, you know, I mean, October 7th showed this very, very clearly, but it also makes Israelis and Jews around the world less safe. And so I want to highlight, you know, I wanted people to know that, that we're not going to fix anti-Semitism or the tragedy of the Holocaust by creating another catastrophe for anyone else. You know, that safety is only going to come from like true solidarity and from a multiracial democracy where everyone has equal rights.
My name's Lily Greenberg Call. Until 2 weeks ago, I was an appointee in the Biden administration. And 2 weeks ago, I resigned from the Biden administration because I could no longer serve at the pleasure of a president who is aiding and abetting the genocide of the Palestinian people with American tax dollars and under the guise of Jewish safety.
تحولت ليلي من حملات الدعم والمساندة للمرشحين في الانتخابات الأمريكية إلى رفع صوتها عالياً من أجل حشد الدعم لوقف الحرب والإبادة التي يتعرض لها الشعب الفلسطيني. كيف كانت ردة فعل العائلة، المجتمع اليهودي الذي تنتمين إليه هنا في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية؟ هل تعرضتِ لضغوط ما؟ هل اتهموك بأي اتهام؟
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you know, because people in my community have believed this myth for so long that our safety, that we have to make this choice between Jewish safety and Palestinian freedom. People believe that, and it's, you know, many, many years of trauma that allows people to believe that lie, really. So unfortunately for many Jewish people, when you do take a stand for Palestinian rights and freedom, it is seen as a betrayal of our community. And honestly, I mean, that is something that has been perpetuated by the government of Israel and the government of the United States for a very, very long time. And if anything, like what I am doing feels the most in line with the Jewish values I was taught of anything that I've ever done. Because Judaism is about justice and fighting for people who may not, you know, be able to do that themselves.
لم تخشي أن يعني يصفونك بأنك خائنة للشعب اليهودي عندما اتخذت هذا القرار؟
Yeah, I mean, I knew that would happen.
Did they?
Absolutely. There's plenty of people in the Jewish world, in, you know, here and I'm sure in Israel and just across my community who see me as a traitor.
هل تنصحك العائلة والمجتمع اليهودي هنا بأن لا تذهبي إلى إسرائيل؟
I'm in community with a lot of people who regularly go and do protective presence in the West Bank of Palestinian villages who are under threat from settlers and soldiers, you know, and those are the people that I would want to go with if I were to, but I think my voice is more necessary here, and I want to use the privilege that I have of being an American, you know, because our government is so deeply responsible for what's happening to Palestinians to try and push for a change here. I think, you know, the American government has all the leverage in the world, and they're not choosing to not use it in this moment at all.
And we are not free as long as the President of the United States continues to make Jewish people the face of the American war machine. Free Palestine! And we know that these are lies.
ليلي، قلت بأن الرئيس بايدن يستخدم الشعب اليهودي واجهة للسلاح الأمريكي. لماذا قلت هذا؟
Because it's the truth. Because, you know, Biden has said that he has used his continued support for Israel, continued sending Israel weapons, as the justification he has used for that is because this is for Jewish safety. You know, he has said things like, if there wasn't Israel, not a Jew in the world would be safe. And That's not true. The U.S. does not support Israel unconditionally because the U.S. cares about Jewish safety or Jewish people or even, Israeli people and their safety. It is because of military interests in the region. It is because of the military-industrial complex that benefits financially from continued death and violence. And it is because of Christian Zionism, which is an incredibly powerful force in the United States. There are more Christian Zionists in the U.S. than there are Jews. There's CUFI, the Christians United for Israel lobby, and even AIPAC, which is more well-known but less influential, is run by a Christian Zionist. For me, I could not be a part of an administration where my boss and the person that I was supposed to work for and represent was using my community and the death of people in my community to justify the genocide of another people and saying that it's somehow supposed to be for us.
نتنياهو يقول بأن ما يقوم به الآن سيجلب السلام لشعب إسرائيل وأرض إسرائيل. ما ردك على هذا؟
I don't think you can kill your way to peace. There's no military solution here. That's very, very clear. Experts of all kinds have been saying that for years. A war in Lebanon and Iran is also not going to create peace. There's no way that continued violence and escalation will create peace. And if we want to talk about peace or even returning the hostages, there was a ceasefire in November for, I think, 8 days, right? And in that time, 100 and something hostages were returned home. That is the only thing. How many hostages were returned through a military operation? I think under 10.
شكرا ليلي.
شكرا.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you. Thank you.